All right, we're live. All right, hey everyone, welcome back to Hangops. It has been a while, and you are all getting the underside of my chin since I'm currently in a new desk configuration, waiting on a webcam to go on top of my new monitor. So, welcome back. Gosh, I think we've been off for 3 weeks now, 3 or 4 weeks. So yeah, but we're back. We're ready to roll. Got some good stuff lined up for the rest of the year. So obviously it is June 13th, 2014, and we are here to discuss days of DevOps past and days of future DevOps past. Yeah, so there's been, obviously DevOps days, right? Some pretty amazing conferences. Been going for a while now. In fact, I think the 5th anniversary of the original one in Ghent is coming up in October. So certainly been pretty amazing to watch that community, that sort of in many ways I think core of the DevOps movement community, whatever we want to kind of call this crazy bunch of global people trying to do cool things. It has grown a lot, and I've been seeing a lot of excitement over the last couple weeks about how DevOps Days Pittsburgh, the inaugural Pittsburgh one, went. So I thought it'd be fun to recap that. So we got a few people who were there and involved, including one awesome part of our panel who was his first conference ever. Wrote a great blog post about that and everything that he got out of it. So I thought we'd kind of dive into those things. So to start with, why don't we do a quick round of introductions for people that might be new. Myself, obviously, I'm Brandon Burton at Solars on Twitter, one of the original founders of Hangops, currently doing operations, technical thought leadership at Lookout Mobile Security. We'll just go right to left. So, Seth, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Seth Vargo. I'm a release engineer at Chef. I'm also the inventor of the internet at Seth Vargo on Twitter.
Awesome. And Jake?
Yeah, I'm Grubernut, or Jake, and I'm a systems administrator for the Data Cave. And a couple weeks ago was my first ever conference, and it was the first ever DevOps Days Pittsburgh. So I did not invent the internet, but yeah.
Cool. Chris C. Weber. Unmute.
Apparently my Hangops foo is lacking today. I'm Christopher Weber. I am at CWeber on Twitter, and I am a community software engineer at Chef, helping to keep the cookbooks awesome.
Great. And last but certainly not least, Bridget.
Hi, I'm Bridget Krumhout, and I'm at Bridget Krumhout on Twitter. Yes, I know it's 15 characters long, but I only made my Twitter account a year ago, so what are you going to do? Everything else is taken. But I am an ops engineer at 8th Bridge, now a Fluid company, a social commerce startup in Minneapolis, and I'm also helping organize DevOps Days Minneapolis. It'll be pretty exciting.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, let's definitely come back to that, talk about Minneapolis and other upcoming ones. But let's dive into Pittsburgh. Right, Bridget, Jake, Seth, you were all there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was there.
Okay, cool. And maybe we can start with you, Jake, since it was your first, and you did write what I thought was a really awesome blog post. So yeah, just kind of maybe you want to recap your post for us and your experience.
Sure. So basically, this is my first ever conference. I never had the opportunity to go before, and I couldn't afford it, so I tweeted at Pete Cheslock, said, "Hey, what can I do to be able to go?" And DevOps Days Pittsburgh tweeted out that you would have to write an essay to go. So I wrote this whole essay explaining why I wanted to go and why I wanted to learn and why I thought it would be awesome, and they paid for my way to go, and I just had to show up. So I showed up and had a blast. I learned so much, and it was just really eye-opening to be able to go to that.
Cool. So yeah, so what was what was the event like? Like, was there a theme? Kind of, what were the talks? Like, this is to everyone who was there. Just getting, just give us a rundown of kind of what the event was, how it was structured, how it went.
I'll go since I made the schedule. Um, so I was one of the organizers for DevOps Days Pittsburgh. We actually had 9 talks. So we had 4 talks on the first day, 4 talks on the second day, and then we had a closing keynote from Todd Underwood, who's the director of site reliability engineering at Google Pittsburgh, kind of as like a way to wrap up the day and bring everyone back together at the end of the conference. We had a variety of talks, uh, you know, deep technical talks, like a very interesting Docker talk from Eric Windish, who works for Docker, all the way up to Jennifer Davis talked about burnout and going from hero to zero. Pete Cheslock has the coolest title for a talk ever: how to fail with this one weird trick. Um, whereas he says, spoiler alert, there's more than one way. Uh, we had one of the most interesting talks that is completely non-technical, but was really liked by the audience, and I heard a lot of people talking about it. Was Nicholas, whose last name I still can't pronounce. He's an associate teaching professor at Columbia University. He had a talk called "Harnessing the Power of Conflict," which has absolutely nothing to do with technology or DevOps or computing in general. But everybody really latched onto it because it seems like it was really at its roots like the DevOps movement and getting people to work together in a way that's synchronous and harmonious. What else did I forget? I know there were more talks.
Well, you can't forget the bacon because I've heard great things about the bacon.
Or
Um,
Jennifer Davis's talk.
Yeah, Jennifer Davis's talk was actually amazing because I think most of us who work in ops have been that single point of failure and have been that person waking up in the middle of the night, night after night. Um, and yeah, of course, everyone says that's great, but it's not great because it's terrible for you and it's also terrible for the organization. And she really laid out for us why we don't want to be that hero. We want to remove unreliable single points of failure from our infrastructure, and that includes ourselves as a single point of failure.
well, exactly. And it's been interesting just to hear some of the podcasts and things talking about that. And it's not something we visit often enough. And it's interesting because right now as we talk a lot about DevOps, we hear this, oh, well, we embed an ops engineer in the dev team, which basically means we add a single point of failure for all the ops tasks to each team instead of having, uh, a team of ops people to handle that workload. And it's been really interesting to kind of watch that how that's unfolded within on the actual business side, and where we constantly see this push into situations where it like there's this desire to, oh, well, we only need an ops person, and I just, she's right, you've got to not do that because you're going to get yourself in trouble as a company. As a note, I have not actually seen the talk, but I've heard great things.
So one, I'm trying to get Jennifer to join. Maybe she'll join and tell us about that. But two, to rat hole for a second on embedding. If uh, if that's what people think embedding is, they're doing it wrong, categorically wrong. If you're going to be doing embedding, there needs to be two things. One, you need to have solid, reliable self-service stuff in place for deployment and provisioning and all that stuff. Because if you're embedding someone in a team, what they should be doing is they should be being embedded as the role of an advisor. They should be helping the devs learn how to do the what of operations, not actually be doing the what. They should be talking more about the what of it, not the how. And they should be enabling developers to self-service deploy, get environments, push code, set up monitoring, be on call. Like that's the point of embedding in the DevOps way is not that like here you get an ops person, you get an ops person. It's that you get an ops teacher who's going to teach you how to do these things so that you can do them yourself. And so there's this, with the assumption that your infrastructure and all your tooling and things are either in place or going to be built by those, developers plus ops working together. But yeah, if it's like, creating a single point of failure, then it's definitely it's definitely not going to work right. But to back up a minute, on Jennifer's talk, so obviously, bus factor of 1 is bad. Single point of failure, firefighting hero stuff is bad. How do you reduce that? Like if in more the context of like, hey, I'm the ops person, not less like I'm embedded in it. Maybe I'm the sole ops person. How was there strategies discussed for how to reduce that hero factor?
I don't know if Jennifer provided specific examples, but the story that she told was really interesting about how she was put in this position, and basically she went on vacation for an extended period of time and didn't take her phone with her. So from the parable that I can unravel in that is the best way to figure out if you're a single point of failure is to go away. And if things start catching on fire, then you're a single point of failure. If things you have little brush fires, you're probably not a single point of failure. You're just a valuable employee. But as soon as you start building up that institutional knowledge to the point where other people can't operate without your input, that's when you know you have a problem.
And I wanted to add that actually I am the only ops person on a small dev team. And I think that I definitely probably started out being guilty of exactly that. And the dev team is so great, and we all share on-call and whatnot, and the developers are so great that we actually got to the point where while I was at DevOps Days Pittsburgh, they finished the cutover to cut us over from using Akamai to CloudFront, completely production cutover. I was completely uninvolved. Conference Wi-Fi being what it is, I couldn't really be involved, and it went perfectly smoothly. And that is just such a happy story to me. It's I don't think that would have been possible in previous experiences of mine for sure. And maybe even in the past when I wasn't as committed as I am now to making sure to share information.
That is awesome. Props to the dev team and props to your team, being able to make that happen, especially because, yeah, Akamai makes my eyes bleed. I just kind of taking us back to that original point, the biggest thing is someone that didn't attend DevOps Days Pittsburgh, I have been absolutely impressed by the amount of discussion around the non-technical talks. In fact, quite frankly, I couldn't tell you any of the technical talks were given, but I have heard just oodles about the non-technical talks. And to me, that's the most exciting thing, because one of the problems I think we get into with DevOps is this idea that, oh, well, DevOps, and then, oh, look at these shiny tools over here. And, the thing that makes DevOps is, yes, you need the tools to help facilitate cultural change, but cultural change is what actually makes it happen. And to hear a lot of the non-technical discussions around culture really come to light was just inspiring, because it's so important to be having those conversations. So
I would go so far as to, I wouldn't necessarily call them technical and non-technical. I mean, from an outsider's perspective, a lot of them are very technical no matter what the topic, but I would say maybe culture talks versus tools talks.
I can see that, definitely. And it's funny, just as I said that reality of a couple years ago, I went to DevOps Days Silicon Valley, and I forget the gentleman's name, but he got up a couple times. He's like, we're not talking about culture. We're talking about tools. How do we fix this? And I would say DevOps Days Pittsburgh has been the exemplary that doesn't work. Exemplary example. Can't talk today. Of the way to do it, where you absolutely are seeing awesome things come in about conflict and about how we prevent the kind of the organizational behavioral problems that come about. So
Yeah, and Chris, one of the things I wanted to mention, since you did miss out on the best thing that has happened yet this year, um, the videos, the live streams are all captured online, so anybody can go and watch them. And we're still in the post-production phases of getting the nice, high quality, high definition videos that are half slides, half presenter, published out there. But you can watch the live stream, and you can catch up on just a small piece of the awesome that you missed out on.
Cool. Yeah, just to reiterate one thing there. You know, I think that framing it as sort of like culture versus tools makes sense. And there's an important point that I see get made here and there, but I always like to hammer on is that um, tools don't create culture, right? Tools can help reinforce workflow and sort of like be a reinforcer of cultural ideals, but tools themselves will never create the kind of positive change that that we're talking about, trying to create and foster at these events. And so I think as a community we've recognized that, and we're addressing some of the other things. Um, so one of the things that seemed to come out, especially out of Jennifer's talk, was there was a lot of discussion around burnout, right? And this burnout.io got created. Just curious if anyone had any comments on that in particular.
I thought the site was kind of awesome. Although I've got to be honest, I'm kind of sad that we haven't seen video come out of Scale yet, from Lars's talk on burnout, because it's been interesting. Like a lot of the burnout talks have been like about saving the company, and Lars's talk was very much so "fuck you, pay me," um, and it's I'm hoping that we will hear more about some of those types of things, or of that kind of attitude of understanding. Because like there's the positive side of this discussion around burnout, in the sense of we need to be keeping ourselves from doing this, and the companies are awesome, and we need to make sure that we're not turning ourselves into single points of failure. And then there's the side of things that Lars talked about at Scale of uh, a lot of the business people see us as, and well, hell, like you hear it constantly, it's human resources. In fact, it's gotten so far as when I left UC, they were working on a human capital management system, because we're not even a resource anymore. We are just capital, which basically means there are people that absolutely look at it as, how can I exploit this? How can I exploit these people? And Lars's talk at Scale this year talked a lot of the burnout that gets caused by business
You're getting
Chris is
choppy,
cutting
Chris.
out.
Yeah,
people,
here. Yeah, you may need to reboot
for
your.
lack of a better term.
You may need to reboot your internet, Chris. Um, yeah. Well, there's an interesting thing there about how uh, there is sort of you can almost say traditional tension between what we see as like business and technology, right, within a business, and that yeah. So Lars Lettinen, he gave this talk sort of from personal experience going through burnout. Um, and it was like, Chris, you kind of said the one thing, like often burnout's talking about saving the company, and this was more sort of about like saving yourself. And also like it was certainly like, it was a little bit of devil's advocate, which is one of the things Lars does best. But there's some salient thoughts in that about, like sort of, taking care of yourself, like thinking yourself sort of you as an individual. And in a way, I think like, at a higher level, it's even thinking about like, you know, I guess being tactical maybe about like the kind of culture you want to be in. You know, Andrew Clay Schaefer, right at Little Idea, gave a talk at the Agile Alliance conference last year. Um, and a lot of it was about organizational learning, but some of it was kind of like I think the talk title was like DevOps, what's next? The game has changed. Um, you know, and one of the points that he made in there, pretty like cut and dry, was that you know, it's like if there isn't support from the top down, like you know, for this like kind of cultural change we talk about, then it's not going to happen, right? So there certainly is a component of like you can't fix every organization, and some organizations and some cultures are going to be antithetical to kinds of things that like you know that we at least so I think of as like the DevOps data community that are valued, and so there's a challenge there.
Well, sometimes you just have to let people fail. Like, I mean, if you go through the burnout website, that's pretty much like the first thing is determine if it's self-inflicted, and this happens too if you're trying to suggest or push through a cultural change, and you're getting resistance back. You just sort of have to. Sometimes you do have to let people fail and just realize that they have to be given the opportunity to realize that they're not doing necessarily the best thing. And I've certainly seen that with trying to push through organizational changes. It's like the organization is set in their way, and that's it.
I think probably another thing that's important to remember is you can't tool your way out of a broken culture. I mean, applying tools to a culture that's broken is probably just going to make it worse. People need to actually buy into the idea of cooperating before the idea of having tools will actually fix anything.
Yeah, you can't apply a technological solution to a people problem. Like sometimes you can, but sometimes you just need to get rid of the people.
Or get them to change their attitude.
Yeah, or remove yourself from the presence, which is the seasonal sysadmin migration, as John Vincent put it.
That was freaky this year, like the number of us that all like changed jobs all at once.
I think I probably about 30 or 40% of the admins I know all like just quit and went somewhere else.
I wonder if Nathan Harvey's slide deck about quit your job has helped this at all.
I don't think I saw that one.
I'll have to dig it out and drop it into the chat room, or into the IRC room, rather.
Yeah, well, like I can't remember exactly, but it's something like I've heard it said something like "get a better job" or "get a better job." Kind of the the simplification. If you can't improve where you are, then you got to go somewhere else. So one thing is interesting, kind of on this topic of like resistance to cultural change and like how change is driven. I know it's not necessarily like in necessarily the language of like DevOps and DevOps Corporation, but a little higher level. But Kevin, a lot of what you do is around applying a lot of like some of the higher level like or some of the principles that sort of DevOps has co-opted, right? A lot of the lean stuff and these kinds of things. Is that kind of part of what you do, kind of day to day, is helping organizations figure out how to apply a lot of these changes?
I like to think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny that you mentioned this. I mean, this is the real. I guess if there is quote unquote a problem, this is the real thing, right? I mean, I've been joking with a lot of people this week that it really doesn't matter whether you do Weight Watchers, Atkins, DevOps, or Lean. At the end of the day, you have the same problem, and that they all run through people. And people seem to have about the same failure rate with any method. So methods are tools. And we just talked about how tools don't fix culture. And it's culture and methods, like our artifacts, the things that we do. They tell us a lot about our values and what we do and what's important to us. And it's really interesting, I think, that a lot of times in the tech community, we keep reaching out for a different wrench or a bigger hammer or some sort of mechanical metaphor and we use these words like drive, implement, pave, roll out to refer to things that we do with human beings. And at the end of the day, I don't think any of us like to be driven, rolled out, or paved or implemented. And yet we seem to like use these words when we're planning. It gives us this false sense of confidence about how mechanical this is. Just edit the human ini file and insert the right line. Work equals yes. Attitude equals cool. Everything I do equals everything I want. All of those kinds of things are just that's not how it works. And so humans are complex adaptive systems. They form them when they get together. And I always like to say to the execs who have these grand visions and plans, substitute the words that you use for people with cats, and just say, we're going to get this group of cats to go do this thing. And then realize that for every cat you have, it's 10 times harder to get a human to do something than it is a cat. And so if you don't figure out how to manage attractors, in other words, figure out what it is that intrinsically motivates people, and use those things to actually help steer and evolve a team towards things that make sense. If you're not creatively probing your environment to find those things, I think then you're going to be stuck in a situation where you're stuck dampening a lot of behavior that is not going to help you with your goals. And that is something you have to do in moderation too. So I think as managers we have this idea that it's just about telling people what to do, about creating really clear plans, and I think at the end of the day what we find is that friction is real. Like the second you have a plan, that plan seldom survives first contact with reality. It's going to get changed, things are going to happen. Just like that, people kind of things are the same way. You have to really be understanding that what existed yesterday with your people may not exist today. You have to be constantly probing and finding out what is. And then you have to be deciding, where are we going, and how do I find attractors that are going to lead us in that direction, and how do I listen really, really carefully and know whenever those attractors aren't working anymore, or there's behavior that I need to focus on dampening that's actually not going to contribute to the mission that we're trying to be on. So this is like evolution. It's not like implementation. I think that's the lesson I've learned over the years.
Kevin, I have a question. Just at the beginning, you're talking about applying mechanical terms to people. Does it seem like that allows for pushing the blame of failure off of you and onto magic?
Yeah, I think so. Sometimes that's a way to diffuse responsibility. And I think it's also our way of expressing what we think is oftentimes a transactional thing. Change isn't transactions. It's not you're going to do this and they're going to do this and then it's all going to be okay. It's like, even with leadership, it's a real struggle to have to tell a leader that they're not aligned and that you need them to change, because there's a certain point at which you realize you can't be there all the time to keep telling them. And there's this fundamental point where you realize that the trajectory that they're on is never going to be the right trajectory. So it's really hard. So I think a lot of times we reach for those mechanical terms because they're quick. We all have experience with a broken thing. But I can't tell you how many times people have brought me into organizations, CEOs and CIOs bring me in to fix something. And the first thing I have to convince them is that, there's nothing that's actually broken. This isn't a machine. This is a series of interactions that makes up a system, so it's complicated. That's generally what we talk about. But I think it's just easy to use those mechanical words. We're lazy, I think. Plus, the other thing is maybe we're conditioned. A lot of us work with fairly, software and hardware all have mechanical abstractions because they are kind of machines in a way. And so that's the realm that we're conditioned to work inside of. And so we spend a lot of time there. We really need to think as tech people about how our work environments condition our thinking, because they do. If you've ever noticed among a big group of developers, really focused on a project, they can turn into a bunch of literalists when they're focused on mechanical problems for quite a while. And I've just noticed this, that everybody starts talking like Spock. They get all very logical. This is not the place that you deal with other humans from. So I think that's the other thing, too.
having dealt with a few companies that actually manufacture goods, um, not just software, but there's the whole concept of there's a fixed point in time and everything has to get done by this, and the entire organization deals with this, and there's a release date, and that's when we tell China to start making stuff. We start pressing DVDs, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And just reflecting back, I think that a lot of those organizations sort of have treated people as like a people problem as like a fixed thing that can get resolved by a certain point.
Yeah, yeah, like a lot of that stems from kind of the mechanical idea from Taylor, and we divide things up into little pieces that we can manage, and those pieces, some point when they get so small, don't become human anymore. And I think if you look at how our business leaders are trained, they're trained in a reductionist fashion. They learn about managing business by learning all the small parts. They don't actually learn anything about what they're managing, which is actually human beings. You find very few CEOs that have degrees in anthropology, but actually that's more of what they're doing in many cases. So the things they grab onto are things that we use in accounting, which are all metaphors for transactions and mechanical things. So yeah, I think the next generation is going to be more formed from a biological perspective, like we're dealing with humans. And you'll see this in history, like whenever things become unhuman in working conditions, humans just start leaving the job. Weren't we just talking about that? Like 30% of somebody just threw a number out. Like 30% of their friends don't work where they worked last year because they just left because they're tired of it. That's that's serious. Like that tells you about two things. One is there's a tight employment market for the skills we have because we can do that. I mean, we're privileged. But the other thing is that employers need to pay attention because they don't own us anymore.
Well, I mean, part of the problem too is also that we, like our generation, define that as you will, does not no longer feels an attachment to the company that we work for. Like,
yeah. Well,
you'll get rid of us as soon as you possibly can, and we'll get rid of you.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's also interesting just to point out I'm finding that like depending on even the industry makes such a huge difference in how they think about people and how they think about things in general. So I spent a lot of time in academia, and even in different departments in academia, they think about the world so much differently. And then being in software organizations, it's even more different because there's just such different goals, and the management aspects of things where you're managing changes things a lot. So, for example, when I was in the administrative side of campus, it was all about money and resources and this, that, and the other. When I worked for the research side of the organization, it was really focused on how do we make sure on taking care of professors because that's what we did. And then in software organizations, even the difference between demand media and chef has been really different about how they think about problem sets and whatnot. So the industry, I think, has a huge impact on those thought processes as well.
There was I can't remember the name of the movie, but it was done by the Janus Silent Bob guys. Anyways, there was a scene in it where it's like basically you do one thing for love and the next two things for money. And it was about making movies. It seems to relate to some of the experiences that I've had. At least I'll do like one job because it's interesting, then I'll do next two jobs because money. Then repeat that process over again. I can't remember the name of the movie.
Something else that seems relevant to the seasonal migration that was mentioned earlier is that it does seem like people start going somewhere and then they get everyone they know to join them there. I know I've seen the waves of that go across Twitter. It's like, oh, everyone's following you, okay? Everyone's following you now. And I see that all the time, and I think that says something. Sure, like the DevOps survey, for example, the survey of practice that just results just came out, talks about where the competitive advantages for companies are. But I think a big part of the competitive advantage is you attract people, they bring their friends. You're beating your competitors because you're taking the best people if you're cultivating the best environment.
You have to be slightly careful of that too, because now you're creating a tribe within your own organization that follows that person around. You got to now be extra super careful about who joined because of that, and you have to make sure that that person's happy at all times. Otherwise, they'll quit and repeat the same process.
Yeah.
And then you have a staffing exodus.
Yeah.
Well, and so that's
true.
kind of interesting that you point that out. The person I've seen this the most with, and I'm just going to call him out, is Mark Imbriaco. Like you've seen when he moved to GitHub, a bunch of people came along. When he moved to DigitalOcean, a bunch of people came along. And they aren't all the same people, but there are a few that have kind of moved both directions. And I think there's something to be learned there. Mark is a manager, and holy crap, finding good managers is hard. So when you find one, you follow them because, damn it, like it's not a solved problem. Like we talk about awesome companies, and I'm super happy to be working for Nathan, but like, when you talk about the real issue, the people that have defined my experiences over the last few years have been my managers, not the company per se, and that should be a huge wake-up call to anyone that's in upper management. You should be looking at who your managers are, who your people are that are dealing with your teams day to day, and are they people that when they leave, people are going to want to follow them? And if they're not, you probably want to fix that because you're not cultivating the right kind of culture internally, in my not so humble opinion.
Well, don't put people on pedestals, though.
Oh,
Well, yeah.
No, for sure.
Yeah, and I think the other thing you got to really be cognizant of is that you want to build systems that cultivate leaders. So you want to actually see people go. So one of the things that I think that I've really focused on over the years is not building personality-based organizations, right? So you want to build a team where everybody understands their role, and when people succeed, you want to see them succeed, and hopefully you have places for them to go. But sometimes what they need to do is somewhere else, and that's healthy. It also creates an understanding that your company can add value to other people. So when they come in, they think, gosh, some of these guys have gone on to really great things here and other places. So what you really got to focus on is where's your bench, what's your succession plan, and do you have a system that actually cultivates people, or every time you lose somebody, does it feel like there's this huge hole? And sometimes it's tough to replace really great personalities, but I've watched too many orgs that focus too much on the hiring side of things to get talent rather than the cultivation side, and that's a long game. And you see organizations, and you don't see this a lot in software, by the way, and you do see this in other companies that have more longevity from that standpoint, where people don't seem to get, it's not cyclical. But yeah, succession plans are really important, and leaders really need to be focused on the fact that any given time somebody is going to leave, and they're going to need other people to step up. That's got to be a part of your planning.
Well,
I want to add to that really quickly. Wasn't there a really great blog post a few months ago, and I cannot remember which org it was about, but it was about some organization that's active in this space and how they don't call their ex-employees ex-employees. They call them, I don't know, alums or something. The idea being what you just said, that people come in, they work with the organization, it's great, maybe they move on to something else, they still maintain ties, and there's that good continuity throughout.
Yeah, I hear this literally daily from different folks, and we're all lucky to have really talented friends, and so you hear the recruiter stories and you hear about offers, and you'd be surprised who's getting offers all the time, right? And so the thing that I'm always saying to people when they come to me and say, should I go work at X because I have a really great thing at Y, they frame it as this great either or. And I've always encouraged people to say, you can be honest with where you're working about what you want to do. It has consequences, don't get me wrong. Going in and saying, hey, I'm getting a great offer somewhere else, that's not the point. You can actually I've seen people that leave a company, go somewhere else for a few years, and then come back. Like, you have to treat everybody really well because this business is small. And you know, I even say people that are working for you, if you have to let them go or if something doesn't work out, you really, really want to take care of them because in 3 years you may be working for them, and you just don't know. And so, you know, it really does come around. But I'd also, you know, it's not about missing some boat that you'll never catch again. You know, I think we all focus way too much as risk-averse people on opportunity costs. And, you know, this notion of that we're missing out on the next big thing. And I think a lot of times in the process we fail to invest in ourselves and fail to actually do what we can do with ourselves to actually create something that's more worthwhile for ourselves. Like we want other people to invest in us. We want other people to draw us in. And I get wary of companies that use that as a tactic. I like to hear when I'm being recruited about, so what are you going to do for yourself? How are you improving? Because I don't want to be hired by a company that wants me to improve them. I want a company that's actually worried about how I'm going to improve. That example is what carries over to the people around me. I expect that out of folks around me because I do it. So that's one of the big things I've noticed is people just, there's too much either or thinking. I'm going to miss out on something. I've got to jump this ship to jump to something else. How privileged are we that we even get to have these thoughts and conversations? There's a lot of people out there that can't find work for years right now. So, you know, we are drowning in privilege in some ways, and it's kind of creating this, a lot of hopping, I think, trying to find the right lily pad.
It's funny that you say that because that's actually something I struggle with at home. Just having that conversation. My dad, you know, great customer service manager, really gets it, but he's been in the newspaper industry all his life, so therefore he gets kind of bucketed into these things, and you know, he doesn't have a college degree, so therefore, and it's for him to find a job is difficult because it just they aren't out there, and you have to like pattern match on your resume against things. Whereas we absolutely are in a place right now where it's like, you know, if something were to go wrong with Chef tomorrow, I could put out a tweet and say, hey guys, I'm looking for something. Anyone got any suggestions? And probably within a couple of weeks, fairly easily have a job lined up.
Hey,
I've had,
speaking of that, did we
I've had
find
people-
Chef a job yet?
I've had people repeat this joke back to me, which is amusing. Although in Vancouver, it was like, they're like, "Oh, you have a job already?" I'm like, "Yeah, I had to do one before the elevator got to the ground floor." And
True though.
That's good. That's good.
that's exactly what happened. Like, and they're like, "Oh, well," and I'm like, "Oh, that sounds less funny now that I have that said back to me."
Yeah.
Speaking of Vancouver, we're getting up to the top of the hour, close. Let's cover some future DevOps days. So, Vincent, you're involved with DevOps Days Vancouver. Want to tell us when and where and what that's about?
We've got a committee together, or the beginnings of a committee. We've got people that are willing to be responsible for the event, but we haven't planned anything out specifically yet. It'll most likely be around the same time and same place because someone's got their finger up.
The time, which was what, last year?
Last year we had it. That's a good point.
Okay. Well, you look that up. Bridget, you want to tell us about Minneapolis?
Sure. We do have a time and a place for Minneapolis because it's pretty soon, actually. DevOps Days Minneapolis is going to be July 17th and 18th, the 1 month of the year that Minnesota has never recorded snow. So you're guaranteed a snow-free experience. It'll probably be 85 degrees out, or, you know, pushing 30, whatever you prefer. And it's going to be a really great program. You have a week left for the cheaper tickets, so I recommend going to devopsdays.org and getting your ticket now. And we have a great slate of speakers from our opening keynote, who is Sasha Bates. She is actually a local and works for Chef. She's giving an opening keynote that I'm really excited about. And then we have a number of fantastic speakers. And then we actually have our closing keynote is we managed to get Patrick Dubois. So he's going to come and talk about the last 5 years of DevOps Days. For
Awesome.
those of us who aren't going to be able to make it to Ghent, I think it's really awesome that he's actually going to be in the U.S. this year speaking at our event. So, yeah, and of course, all of the typical open space stuff. We have a whole bunch of fantastic sponsors and new ones being added, so check back after this Hangops. Maybe I'll have time to add a couple more to the website. But we have evening event plans that are pretty exciting. I'm going to try to get that local flavor in. So we'll have some outdoor stuff. We'll have a local trivia mafia, fabulous prizes. We have O'Reilly and Velocity sponsorship. So Seth can tell us about how great that was at Pittsburgh, and some of the stuff they provided. And we're going to have some of the same kinds of stuff. If Seth is still there somewhere, maybe he left.
Yeah, I think we lost him.
Oh, okay.
I think he had to rock to go build some stuff.
Okay. But yeah, we will have a ticket to Velocity New York to give away, for example.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, it looks like some of the other ones that we don't have people on to talk about. Chicago is planned for October, right? Amsterdam is this month. Silicon Valley is this month. It looks like there's a Brisbane one next month, so maybe you can get to that one, July 25th and 26th. The 5th anniversary, right? You mentioned Patrick. The 5th anniversary of the original one in Ghent, October 27th and 28th. Boston in August. Looks like there's a Toronto one, and I believe, Steve, you know a thing or two about that one, right?
Yeah, I can speak about that.
Awesome.
So I actually just booked the venue this morning, so it's fully go. It's taken a while to get off the ground because I had kind of a full organizing team last year, and then end of last year they all actually had to leave the country on job hopping. So I'm putting a team together, but we've got the venue booked for September 12th and 13th, which is a Friday, Saturday. So it'll be pretty traditional layout, morning sessions and afternoon open spaces, and expect to see a lot of updates very soon. I'll be updating the website over this weekend.
Awesome. Is anyone else involved with anything? Any other DevOps days that are upcoming? Want to say anything?
I will be speaking at the Silicon Valley one, so everyone should come to that one too.
Cool. And that's in 2 weeks,
Nice.
right?
Yeah, I should probably get that talk ready.
No, that's you do that on a plane.
Yeah, you do that the day of. Come on.
All you need are a bunch of GIFs. So.
Yeah, exactly. And cat pictures. Come on.
And some math.
Math is good.
Yep. Put some Greek up there. Everyone was.
I think actually Ben is in here, and he's the maintainer of Burnout.io. If he had some words about that.
Oh, yeah, that'd be awesome.
Oh, hi everybody. Honestly, at this point, I think we could say that the project is officially open source. So we have at least 4 contributors now. So it's kind of cool to see that get launched. But yeah, it's just a resource for people who are experiencing burnout as a result of the DevOps Days talk in Pittsburgh. We don't know everything, but we're hoping that collectively we can eventually know some things.
I just wanted to say real quick that I went to the site when it was launched, and coming back now, it's really developed really well. I think the actionables was probably my favorite thing. Like that sort of checklist for verifying, whether you're experiencing burnout or whether you're even aware of the symptoms. That's really cool to see.
Yeah, it's been really fun to put together, and I'm actually kind of encouraged because there are some other projects that are starting up now, specifically like message board style things, and hopefully we'll hear some news about that in the near future. But yeah, it's good to see kind of a community approach to this, and I hope that we can continue developing the site. I'd like to move to a model and see if we can get the community to move to a model of featuring articles and things like that. Every once in a while, somebody might write something new, and kind of generate some new content to the site to keep it interesting and bring in different perspectives. But we'll see how that goes.
Awesome.
That was one of the things that came out of the open space breakout. Jonathan Daniel, he's at Binary Cleric on Twitter. He wanted to talk about burnout, and then I think that was either the first or second day of one of the open spaces, and then a website got spawned off that. And then I think the first day that we were having the open spaces, I posed a question to one of the newbie groups, and that question went on all the way until like 9 p.m. at dinner.
Oh my God.
Those open spaces were really amazing, and it was just so awesome to just get real in depth. It started as a group of like 25 people, and then by 9 p.m. it was the four of us talking around a table about the same thing, and it was amazing.
Yeah, I have to definitely agree on that point. I was a little bit skeptical at first. Like, Pittsburgh was my first DevOps days, and I wasn't sure, like, oh, we have all this free time. I don't know, could they not book enough people, or what's going on here? But I was really surprised. It was really beneficial. I mean, I work in education, and it was surprising to see a lot of people that had some. I think there were some professors from I forget which university.
It was CMU. Was it?
Yes, CMU. And it was just really interesting to see the conversations that spawned off, and projects that could become come into existence from that.
Yeah, the CIO from CMU was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's followed up with me since. He really enjoyed it.
I got so many business cards. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was ridiculous, wasn't it? That was actually probably one of the better DevOps days I've ever been to, just from a sense of community, and I think the listening and sharing was really good, and the tone was really. I really think it's setting the tone for the ones that are going to come this summer and fall. That's why I'm excited about Minneapolis and Silicon Valley. I think all of these coming. There's something building here. It's more than just open spaces. It's more than just the talks. There's kind of a roots thing going on here. It's like we're getting back to our roots of the social side of this. I think that's my bias, but I just heard it loud and clear. I mean, everybody, Bridget, everybody was talking. Jennifer. I mean, there were some great talks that I wanted to stand up and like on the top of my chair and point to the moon like we were all going together. Like I felt like there was something really going on.
Well, yeah, Kevin, you were even included in a food fight show that just happened on the spot.
Yeah, yeah. There's some ringleaders there that kind of made that happen, but that was great. I mean, Ben and Mark and those guys, that was a lot of fun. But I just think that was kind of what was happening. There was a lot of that stuff going on, like the burnout thing was going on. I mean, it was just that's the fruit of something that's really growing. Like you see action happen. It's not just like a lot of conferences where people leave and they're kind of the same people. I left Pittsburgh a different dude. I think a lot of us left fundamentally different from a perspective standpoint. The session on conflict resolution, Alex, I made a lifelong friend with him. We had never met each other. Our two presentations dovetailed, and we're going to be doing research together for quite some time. I'm probably going to be pursuing some work at Columbia with him. So, it actually fundamentally altered my course. So, I can't thank Seth and the guys for putting up with me and not caning me off the stage for going so long. But I think that was an amazing show.
Yeah.
I can't thank them enough. I'm sorry, Bridget.
Oh, I was just going to say Seth and Andrew and everyone did such a fantastic job, and it's humbling but also exciting to trying to be running one that comes right after that, just because it means we have a lot to live up to. We're going to try. We're not going to be the same, but we're going to try. And this is, I think, part of what Andrew has been talking about over the last year about learning organizations, is that the whole DevOps community is learning and growing together, which means we're all iterating towards being a little better.
Do you have a theme for Minneapolis?
Do we have a theme?
Like now with Lepsa or something?
No, not so much. I don't think we have a specific theme, though that would be interesting. I think it's more, I guess we do have a tagline that's going to be on the T-shirts, just because Minneapolis is the Mill City. And our tagline that's going to be on the T-shirts is, silos are for grain.
That's great. I like that.
But I interrupted Jake, and I want to hear what he has to say, too, just because I've been to a bunch of conferences over the last year and the last couple of decades, and it's really exciting to me to hear what somebody who is just starting to come to these things thinks. So Jake, please.
I just wanted to put me on the spot. I just wanted to thank Seth and Andrew and all of them again, Dan and Colin, all of them. I want to go back to more. I want to go back to more conferences, and I want to just be involved in that community. And that was just something that was so amazing as somebody that has grown up in a small town without that community, just to experience that. And a lot of that came from outside of Pittsburgh, but even just the whole DevOps community and how everybody wanted to work together. I'd always grown up, looking at IRC or looking on online logs at the text editor Flame Wars, and it was common, like, you had a text editor Flame War, but then you also had the Flame War between devs and ops, and it was really cool to see people that were back-end developers, front-end developers talking to admins and talking to operators, and it was just everybody that was there was having the same vision. They all wanted to go to the same place.
That's cool.
It's like having a normal, healthy adult relationship.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
One of the things that I noticed from the last little bit of DevOps Days Vancouver was there was a lot of people that didn't realize, particularly in more of the ops side of things, that there was so many people that did what they did, and I'm like, that's great. We have a support group. We meet at the bar, and then told them about other local meetups that they need to attend.
Now, I would love to go to more, but I can't afford them currently. So
start a DevOps meetup.
We do that.
I think that's a thing. And just start a tech meetup. Call it DevOps, because then it can mean everything. Or cloud meetup or whatever. But
Polyglot.
Yeah, Polyglot. Well, yeah, Polyglot's good. I think Polyglot maybe tends to think more about programming.
Yeah, Polymath would be better.
It is what you make it. But it's a little bit of the change you want to see in the world. When I first moved to LA, there wasn't a lot. There was like a Unix users meetup and like a PHP meetup, and then there was a SoCal DevOps thing that got started, and I jumped on that, and then it kind of died off, and then a couple other guys started, LA DevOps, and I and Chris Weber were both involved in that. But like a lot of that, it was like you sort of like jumping in, just like jump in with some enthusiasm, and people will like people want to help, but also like sometimes people need people will happily let someone else lead if someone is passionate is the thing I've found. I've been able to get involved in I think a lot of stuff just by like kind of volunteering, kind of showing up and saying, hey, I want to help. This is awesome. Just sort of the approaching it with everything is awesome.
Yeah, that's funny that you said that in Stockholm. I was there, I guess it was a couple of weeks ago, and I spoke in the evening to their DevOps group in Stockholm. They had over 800 people in their local DevOps group. I mean, it's pretty impressive. So that's like a DevOps Days just all the time, bigger. It's kind of nuts. So you can do that. That is possible. And it's very collaborative, and it wasn't all just neckbeards. It was like, there were like people in suits. It was kind of crazy. So I think the other part was really awesome was the diversity of the crowd. There were a lot of women. There were all kinds of people that were just interested in becoming programmers. There was like all levels. So I just thought that was really neat. Like, it was a really humble, really, really neat group, and they asked a lot of really great questions. So I just really encourage people, you can do a lot with what you got. You don't have to throw a show.
And Jake, for you, there's somebody you want to chat with. He's Benjamin WJS on Twitter, Benjamin Smith. He works for DreamHost, but he's in Cleveland, and he's involved with a couple meetups there, like the Python one and the and I think it's the DevOps one. So he's someone you might chat with. Just similar. I think Cleveland's similar size to Columbus, similar size and makeup. Maybe I'm wrong, but
Indiana.
Right, but I think they're sort of similar sized towns, probably similar sized tech industries, right?
Not really. Maybe.
Well, I don't know.
I'll still add him and talk to him though.
Yeah, I just like they're he's one of the people I can think of who started doing like community building in a smaller Midwestern town, and it's funny you mentioned arriving in DevOps and like it being such a contrast to like what you see in IRC and what used to be Slashdot now is maybe more like subreddits and Hacker News and stuff. But like, I had a similar sort of foray into this stuff where I was living in a small town in western South Dakota, right, junior high and high school, and IRC and Slashdot at the time were like my lifeline to the tech industry, um, and sort of my connection, and it was like it was sort of what all that I had, and even when I first moved to LA in 2006, like there was like a Unix meetup and a couple meetups, but like there wasn't a ton. And I got a little bit involved with Lopsa and went to Lisa, and even that community had a little bit more of a neckbeardy feel. Like, cloud is blah blah blah, and Windows is blah blah blah, and like if you weren't running the original BSD, then get out of here, kid. And it's like some sharp edges, and suddenly this DevOps thing came, right? And this DevOps day showed up, and it was like, here's my tribe, right? Here's people that are excited about the stuff and passionate, but also like, everyone is welcome. Like there's sort of like a, a resistance to ego is one of the things I think is really cool about this community, and so it's kind of cool to sort of, I think in some ways your experience just getting into it now mirrored what I found when I first got into it. Coming from a similar, like having been in a small town and it's that sort of sense of isolation and stuff.
Just a real brief mention. Even if you are more on the ops side, don't be afraid to show up to developer meetups. A lot of times they appreciate hearing someone that's like, dude, like if you do that, it breaks production, or even being able to have the conversation. I was at a local meetup recently, and I was talking about CDNs, and they're like, what's a CDN? And you can really quickly have this amazing conversation of, oh, if you do this one cool thing over here, it makes your stuff fast. And they were excited because it was like, oh, I see now, and understanding what those next steps to making their stuff work were, which I've found has been awesome. So definitely suggest, even if you are more of the ops persuasion, show up to developer meetups. At very least, it's generally free beer and pizza at a minimum, and then you generally will find interesting people to talk to, and we're all solving the same stuff. It just depends on what side of the fence you happen to be, what part of the problem you're dealing with.
And actually, one of the DevOps Days Minneapolis co-organizers, of which I would be remiss to not mention, that I'm not the only one. There are 8 of us. They're all fantastic. But one of them, Donnie Burkholtz with Red Monk, has been giving a talk lately about the parallel worlds of cloud developers and DevOps. Because there's still a lot of people at their developer meetups talking about cloud development, and they're doing all the same things as more opsy type people are doing. But the two aren't necessarily talking to each other. So we've definitely been trying to reach out, talk to the local like Dev Jam studios and other developer enclaves around town, and make sure, at least this DevOps Days, we're going to try, and I know other ones have done a good job of too, to reach out and get more developers and not just ops people in under the big tent.
One of the best things that I saw coming into this, like growing up like Brandon, or growing up on IRC, is a lot of them, they were the hardcore neckbeard sysadmin that if you ask a question wrong, you're going to get flamed for using the wrong terminology or anything else. And so coming here, it wasn't that judgment or that ego that was showing up. It was just a, hey, come and talk and we'll teach you how to do stuff. That was awesome.
The worst part is I think we can all like list off.
Whereas Mike is doing something weird.
Hello. All right, let's wrap it up there. Now we're
No,
list off rooms.
Good. Let's wrap it up.
List off IRC rooms.
Oh. Cool. All right. Well, thanks everyone. Yeah, some good discussion today, and yeah, I'm not sure what next week's topic's going to be, but I should know on Monday. So have a good weekend, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks.